No.
Okay. Drainage tile or underground installations such as water lines, gas lines, telecommunications.
Each of the farms are quite well tiled. I'm very concerned about the pipeline butchering the tile lines.
Any above ground facilities that aren't readily apparent here that we can't see?
I don't believe so.
All right. Any streams or bodies of water or other noteworthy features?
Some of them have a dredge ditch through them, and a little bit concerned is how the pipeline goes through over under the dredge ditch.
Okay, and is there a dredge ditch on these three, or is it a different parcel that has the dredge ditch?
Oh, I think there's only one parcel that has a serious dredge ditch.
Can you identify which one?
Well, it's not that one. The number you have here is Iowa WR 301 0559 000. I believe that's it right there. Yes, it is.
Okay, so we have that as H-WR-145. Okay, and that ditch that extends from the southwest corner up to almost the northeast corner and exits the property just west of the northeast corner. That's the drainage ditch, a dredge ditch you were speaking of?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And is that a stream as well? Is there running water in that?
Well, it's a dredge ditch that sometimes has water and sometimes does not.
Okay. Are there any other streams or bodies of water on any of the properties?
I don't believe there's anything of concern.
Okay. Timber or forest on any of the properties?
No.
Okay. Any other easements held by any third parties on any of the properties?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Any other feature or condition that might not be readily available on our maps?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. So can you describe specific concerns you have as it relates to the potential pipeline crossing your properties and what the easement might look like to mitigate those?
I have several concerns. Procedure is one of them. A Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll in March showed that nearly 80% of Iowans oppose the use of eminent domain for a carbon pipeline. I hope the Iowa Utility Board follows the wishes of the near 80% of the Iowans and votes against eminent domain. It seems like they're going against the will of the public. In my opinion, the laws pertaining to eminent domain were not written for a few investors to enter personal property, my personal property, against the owner's will for their own personal financial gain. I think the use of the eminent domain for a carbon pipeline is just not the American way. What Summit Pipeline proposes to do is an invasion of the owner's property rights. Our country was founded on respect for property rights and following the will of the majority of the people. The almost 80% who oppose eminent domain have been kept in the dark. The Summit Pipeline people have the potential to receive about $18.4 billion of federal taxpayer dollars over a 12-year period. And the farmers whose land will be damaged and their tile busted up receive peanuts compared to the $18.4 million the owners of the pipeline have the potential to receive. I believe there are newer and better ways to get rid of carbon than by putting it in a hazardous pipeline. We certainly don't want another break like they had down in Mississippi. I think any carbon pipeline in the near future will be obsolete before it's completed. I think new technology is being introduced that is better and safer than the carbon pipeline. Some of the politicians who represent the voters have not been totally open about what's going on. The Iowa House brought up the pipeline issue and had a vote, but the Iowa Senate did not bring the pipeline issue up for discussion. I think that was a planned program. They did not bring up the issue as they did not want the people who elected them to know how they stood on the issue. Some of them did not want to vote on the issue as that would show they supported or did not support the pipeline, and they did not want the voters to know how they stood on eminent domain. I think the risks and the damages caused by the pipeline exceed the benefits of the pipeline. In my opinion, that's why I oppose it.
Thank you. And I understand you oppose, but if a permit is granted, do you have a recommended alternative route?
Well, I think last week a gentleman testified before your group here about an alternative way of getting rid of the carbon that eliminates the need for a pipeline, and I think other technologies coming down the pipeline. There's about 10 different proposals out there. Some of them involve methane and what have you, but I think there's better ways of doing it than having a pipeline.
Correct. I understand what you're saying, but no alternative routes.
Oh yeah, I'd like to route the pipeline away from my land, but the odds of doing that are pretty minimal.
Okay. That gets my questions, so I will open it to the parties. Mr. Taylor?
I'll give it a try. Mr. Van Diest, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. And it looked to me like you had, 10 or 11 parcels that are being targeted?
10 parcels.
10. So did we see them all on the maps? Or
You can certainly look at the maps. I don't think there's anything unusual about them.
And some are in Webster and some are in Wright County?
Some in Webster and some in Wright County, yes.
And they're all in corn and beans?
Corn and beans, a few CRP acres.
Okay. So what are the CRP acres?
I don't know, I'd have to look at the maps, figure it out.
How many acres do you have in CRP?
Not too many.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about the soil or the crops if the pipeline goes through?
Well, you get compaction and you get some of the topsoil mixed with subsoil. It's not a good way to treat the ground, to treat the soil, but I think the biggest problem is that to tear up the tile lines. One of these pieces of ground is pattern tiled, and you absolutely can't run a pipeline through it and salvage the pattern tiling. It's impossible.
How deep is that tile?
It varies from a little bit to quite a bit. I've got a picture here of pattern tiling, and I don't know if you can show it up there or not, but there's no way in the world you can put a pipeline through it.
Yeah.
Not ruining.
The map that's up there now, that shows the dredge ditch you talked about, correct?
Yes.
And I think you said that ditch is intermittent as far as when water is in it?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Yeah. And do you know how Summit proposes to get across that ditch?
No, I don't.
Did you ever talk to any Summit agent about that?
My communication with Summit's been very limited. A year ago, back in like March 11, 2022, it'll be a year and a half ago, I went to the Summit meeting in the same building here. The speakers from Summit talked a little bit about the project, and they opened the project up for discussion. I was one of the first that stood up, and I talked for about 2 minutes. They took the microphone away from me, and they said they had to let other people talk, but later in the meeting they give the microphone back to me. And later in the meeting they gave the microphone back to me. I only had about 30 seconds more to say anyhow, but I thought it's kind of a bad way to handle from a PR standpoint.
What kind of contacts and discussions did you have with Summit's agents or representatives?
I mostly told them I was not interested, and I was objecting to the eminent domain. I was concerned about my tile lines. I told them we just didn't have much to talk about.
Did you try to negotiate any terms with them or any alternate routes?
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
This goes beyond anything specific to Mr. Van Diest's parcels and gets into the parties' voluntary negotiations, which are not something that the board has a role in overseeing.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
As I recall, we've been asking those questions from the very beginning. In fact, Board Member Burns started asking those questions about the negotiations and the contacts with the Summit agents. And I think it certainly does impact the parcel. That's what the negotiations are about.
Go ahead.
Asked and answered as to the question about alternative routes. Board Chair Helen has already asked that question. Second, the fact that those questions have been being asked still does not make them proper. It's not specific to any particular parcel that Mr. Van Diest owns, and it's about private negotiations.
Those negotiations have to do with his land and the very reason that we're here. I don't understand the objection. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just try to keep our line of questioning as tight as we can in relation to the land and any potential easement should a permit been granted. But proceed with your question, Mr. Taylor.
What discussions did you have with Summit's agents or representatives concerning your land and an easement?
Objection.
State the objection.
Asked and answered. Mr. Van Diest has just said there wasn't much to talk about.
Okay. Mr. Taylor.
Well, but he hasn't discussed exactly what the discussions were with the land agents, and that's what I'm trying to find out.
Mr. Van Diest may answer that question if you'd like to. Otherwise, we can move on.
On the night that they took the PA away from me, later in the evening, I talked to Bruce Reistetter briefly, and he said he's going to come see me sometime, but he never did.
have you not signed an easement?
I didn't want them going through my land. I think there's better ways of handling carbon than putting it in a pipeline. And I think that technology will obsolete the pipeline even before they get it built if it's approved. I think it's going to be obsolete before it's built.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. And I don't know who was first, but Ms. High, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Van Diest. I'm Chris Hike, a landowner. Question for you. Do you have any windmills on any of your parcels?
Yes, I do.
Is that going to cause issue, do you believe, with having a CO2 hazardous pipeline?
Now the windmills are on land that the pipeline is not concerned about. It's separate land.
Okay, thank you.
Incidentally, the windmills don't use eminent domain either. I
Ms.
respect them for not using it.
Ms. Colas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Van Diest. I'm way back here. I'm also Jean Colas Family Farms, a landowner like yourself. And I'm asking this of you and the board. You mentioned that you had 10 parcels affected by the pipeline. Is that correct?
Yes,
And also that you have numerous tile fields and you have maps there that show where some of the tile fields are that you have not distributed to the board?
well, I have a thing here that shows what a pattern tiling job looks like that I think if anybody studied it, they'd know you couldn't put a pipeline through without ruining the system. And to do pattern tiling costs about $1,000 an acre, and the pipeline will just totally riddle it.
But not maps pertaining to your particular parcels.
This tile map here is pattern tiled, and this is one the pipeline proposes to go through.
Okay, I would ask the board if there was a way that we could present that as an exhibit and also to bring up the other KMZ files on the rest of his 10 parcels so he can describe where the tile is.
If the witness would like to submit the map, the witness may request that.
Yes, I would like to submit the map just so that you know what pattern tiling is.
We're going to let Chuck make copies and then distribute that.
That'd be fine. On the back of that map, it shows what the tiling cost also.
Board Chair, then I also ask if he would like to request that all of the files, all of the parcels related to the pipeline are brought up on the board so he can describe the tile in each parcel.
Oh, I think that's unnecessary. There's one of them pattern tiled, and there's 9 of them that are well tiled, but they're not pattern tiled. I don't think there's anything unique to show.
Okay, Ms. Colas, I think the witness made that pretty clear.
Okay, so other than the pattern tile, you're not concerned about the damage that building the pipeline would have on that existing tile?
I'm concerned about the tiling on each one of these pieces of ground because the pipeline's going to cut the tile, and when you make a tile repair, it's not really as good as the original tiling, and they're just going to riddle the tile lines on all 10 of the partials.
So you're concerned that if the tile on your land is damaged by construction of the pipeline, that it will not be able to function as properly as it was before it was damaged?
Objection.
State the objection.
Asked and answered.
Okay.
Well, when you repair a tile line, it's never as good as the original tiling job because the old tile is in firm soil and the new tile is in loose soil, and they don't line up and stay lined up.
Thank you. I'll wait until the exhibit is brought up then before I ask any further questions.
All right, we'll go to Ms. Ryan, and then we'll come back, Ms. Colas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Van Diest. I'm over here. My name's Anna Ryan. I represent Carrie Mulvaney Hurth, who's the daughter of a landowner in this proceeding. I just want to follow up on a couple of the things that you mentioned earlier when you were answering other questions. First off, you talked a lot about property rights and eminent domain. Do you feel like this pipeline meets a public use?
No,
If it met a public use, would you object to it?
I don't think the pipeline is public use. I think it's a profitable venture for the shareholders. I think the farmers get paid peanuts for their land, and I just don't think it's fair at all.
And with the, you talked about the wind turbines on your property, said they didn't use eminent domain. Do they pay you well?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Not a question specific to his parcels that are at issue here today.
It's specific to how he uses his land and how he expects to be compensated for the use of his property.
The witness has testified those windmills are on parcels not at issue here today.
Goes to how he expects to be compensated for when a third party uses his property.
And the board has no role in determining compensation for easements, whether those be voluntary or pursuant to an Exhibit H process.
We've been discussing negotiations.
Okay, I think that
throughout this
one's
whole
sustained.
proceeding.
Ms. Ryan, you already stated that there are no windmills on the property. Please proceed to your next question.
Can I ask the specific reason that was sustained?
I think the witness has already testified that there are no windmills on this property and that the future use is corn and soybeans.
So what's the ground? Is that relevance?
I believe that it's been asked and answered, and beyond.
He hasn't discussed the compensation for the turbines. I'm just asking on what grounds was the objection sustained? What is the
I
legal
believe your
reason?
hypothetical is beyond the scope of this witness's testimony, and I think it's a good time to proceed on to the next question, Ms. Ryan.
Okay.
Thank
The
you.
pipeline is a one-time payment. The windmills pay each year. There is that difference.
Thank you. When Mr. Taylor asked you about negotiations, you mentioned that you spoke with Bruce Rastetter. Why would you talk to Bruce Rastetter about negotiations for an easement?
Well, that was on that March 11, 2022 initial meeting a year and a half ago, when they're having meetings to explain the pipeline, and after he took his man took the mic away from him and gave it back later in the meeting, Bruce apologized for him doing that, and we just talked briefly.
Did you think that he would be able to influence negotiations in any way?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
We're back to the individual negotiations for an easement on this parcel, which the board does not have a role in. It's not specific to any of the features on any of the parcels that are at issue here.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ryan.
I'm just following up on an answer that you gave earlier in response to Mr. Taylor's questions.
Same objection. Following up doesn't make it a proper question.
Do you have anything to add, Ms. Ryan?
No.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to move along, please?
That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Van Diest, we've had your pattern tile map and description on the back distributed. Farm 128.
This map just shows where the tile is at. And there's no way you can put a pipeline through there any place that doesn't just shatter the tiling plan.
I appreciate that. Can you help us identify which parcel this is on? Looks like Wright County. Is this a parcel that we've previously looked at on our maps today?
It's Wright County. Blair Township, section 31.
So we've pulled up parcel WR-101 up there on this big screen and on the screen in front of you. That looks, is that the parcel? The pattern map tile that you are moving to admit is the pattern map?
Yeah, that appears to be it, yes.
Oh, all right. Are there objections to admitting?
None. I didn't receive these maps until yesterday.
Seeing
I
no,
asked for a year and a half earlier.
seeing no objections, the board will admit Van Diest hearing exhibit 1. Ms. Colas, I believe you had a question relating to this.
Thank you for providing that map. I can see your concern and also the costs that you had gone to pertaining to that. My next question is on the lower part of that map. What is the type? Who is someone living there to the south of that parcel on the KMZ map? Yes. They have it on the screen where they're highlighting what I'm questioning. What is that?
I'm not certain. Appears to be a residence and some grain bins.
So there are people living there for an operation of some kind, a business?
I'm not certain, but I think so.
Can you measure the distance from the pipeline on his property to that development? I'm too far away to see what the distance was.
It's like 502 feet to the building that is on the northeast corner, furthest northeast corner.
Do you have concern about the safety of the pipeline to those people in residence?
I have a serious concern about the pipeline everywhere. CO2 under certain conditions can be very dangerous and had a bad situation down in Mississippi one time, and yeah, I'm concerned about the safety of the pipeline, yes.
Are you concerned that you have not been provided with a dispersion model of what a rupture, how far it would travel?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Again, outside the scope, not particular to anything to do with his parcels.
Ms. Colas.
It's within 500 feet of the pipeline in his parcel. I think it pertains to it.
Okay, Ms. Ryan, you wanted to weigh in on that?
I do. Since Ms. Colas doesn't have an attorney, I wanted to take the opportunity to weigh in. It seems to me that the safety of the pipeline is very relevant to where or how someone wants it on their property.
Mr. Van Diest, you're welcome to answer that if you would like.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm very concerned about the safety of the pipeline, and the pipeline company hasn't put out much data on what the plume of the problem would be, how far it'd go, how fast it would move. They haven't said much of anything about who we have for responders to a pipeline accident, and what little I know about Iowa, I don't think we've got very many people that have had training on how to handle a carbon pipeline break or leak or problem, and I just think there's a lot of things that haven't been given consideration here.
Are you concerned that Summit Carbon Solutions does not have any experience in operating a CO2 pipeline?
Well, they've certainly never operated a pipeline before. This is a huge project, many, many miles of pipeline covering several states, and I hope they know more about it than I think they do.
Are you concerned about the, do you have like a volunteer first responders, or do you know what, how that's set up?
Objection, Your
Go
Honor.
ahead. State your objection.
Again, the last three questions have started with, are you concerned? And then something related to safety. This is not related to his specific parcels or any of their features.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Colas, if you could try to limit your questions to his specific properties.
Are your parcels covered by a volunteer first responder situation?
I think they're all covered by a volunteer organization rather than full-time response people. I think most of the communities in Iowa have volunteer people responding to a situation like this, and I think only the larger cities have a more professional group, but I don't know for certain.
Do you know how long it would take your first responders to get to an area where there might be a rupture?
No, it'd just be a guess on my part, but I wouldn't hold my breath till they arrived.
Thank you, Mr. Van Diest, for your answers. No further questions.
Ms. Gruenhagen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Van Diest, I'm over your right shoulder. Hi. My name is Chris Gruenhagen, and I'm representing the Iowa Farm Bureau. I just have a couple of follow-up questions for you. You mentioned that you have no wind turbines on your properties.
I do have wind turbines on other properties, but not on these specific ones.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. But does Invenergy hold easements for wind on those properties?
Couldn't quite hear your question.
Okay, the properties that are at issue here, does Invenergy hold wind easements on those properties even though you don't have a turbine on them?
I do not know. I do have some contracts out with them for windmills, but I don't know if it relates to these here properties or not.
So you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you have any rural water or natural gas easements on your properties?
Now I've got rural water, I've got some natural gas easements, yes,
You do?
yes.
Okay. Would that be your Webster County properties?
I believe so, but I wouldn't say for certain.
Do you know where those might be located on the property if we brought up the picture?
No, I do not.
Regarding your tile map that you shared with us,
Yes,
do you know how deep that tile is buried?
it varies probably from 4 foot to 15 foot probably. Depends on the top of the ground.
In the red lines on your exhibit here, are those county tiles or are those your private tiles?
The way I understand the code, the red line is a 12-inch tile line. And the other colors are different diameter tiles from 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch. The red line also signifies an existing tile prior to this job here.
Is this property in a drainage district?
Yes,
Okay. And so does the drainage district have some tiles going across this property?
oh, I'm sure the mains in red are county tile.
And so the black lines and the pink lines are your additions to the county tile?
All these smaller diameter tiles are my expense and not county expense or drainage district.
So those smaller tiles are your private tiles?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, no further questions.
Mr. Jorde?
Yes, thank you. Can we pull up the KMZ maps? I just want to look at those one at a time.
There's several and they're not contiguous, so if you want to just let us know which one you want to look at, we'll pull them up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. In any order is fine by me. So I think we've discussed this one and established the distance to the property to the south. Could you just zoom out on this for a second so we could just get a better look at this? Okay. All right. Now, sir, Mr. Van Diest, that property immediately to on the left-hand side or west, it looks like a large barn facility. Do you know what that is by any chance?
No, I do not.
Okay. Looks like it might be a livestock operation. Do you know if you've got those near your parcels affected?
I probably have to go out and look.
Okay, very good. We could go to the next one, please. All right, sir, and then it appears that 4 out of your 10, so we just looked at one, looks like 4 out of your 10 parcels, affected parcels are here. Has Summit at any time explained why they wanted to go diagonally across your properties as opposed to running, say, upon the eastern boundary line on these properties?
No, they have not. Or I was not interested in having a pipeline through my land. I didn't ask for meetings with them.
Okay, if we could look at that building site, please, in the upper left-hand corner there.
Real quick, Mr. Jorde, can we identify the 4 parcels before, and then we'll be right back to you.
Sure.
So that was WE-034, and the parcel directly to the east of that is WE-021. Directly to the south of that is WE-20020, and the last one there is WE-042. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Jorde.
All right, thank you. And then, sir, you may or may not be familiar. Are you familiar with this operation here, if that's a private farmstead or what that is we're looking at?
I believe it's a private farmstead, obviously.
Can we mouse over on top of that and see if an owner name comes up or it doesn't? Okay. All right. Could I ask to measure from what appears to be the home on that property to the line, please? All right, 547 feet. Okay. Thank you. All right, but in any event, sir, you don't own this. It's not part of another entity that you hold, is it?
I own the land, but do not own the farmstead.
Okay, thank you. And then if we could go to his next maps, please. Okay, and this is Exhibit H, number HWE007. And again, it looks like in the lower left-hand corner, immediately across the road to the west, there's a home. Do you have any idea who might own that home, sir? And if not, that's okay. Well, if I could just ask staff to do another distance off that home, please, on this parcel. All right, 1,164 feet, it looks like, 164. And then if we could go to the top, it looked like there was another operation there. Is this any part of your operation that you can tell, sir?
I do not own those building sites.
Okay, very good. And then if we could get another distance off that, please, the home there. All right, about 1,146 feet. Okay. Okay. Sir, as to your specific, well, do we have one more left? I think we might have another one.
Okay, staff is saying we've had all the parcels up.
We've seen them all. Very good, thank you. Sir, specifically to your parcels, I'm sure you understand that Summit is asking, obviously, for the right to condemn your land for its project if this were to be approved. The fact that they're asking for an access easement over the entirety of all of your parcels, does that concern you?
Yes.
All right. And do you market any of your grain to ethanol plants?
I cash rent all the farm ground out, but I know the tenants sell a lot of grain to the ethanol plants, yes.
Okay. Do you happen to hold any investments in ethanol plants?
I have an investment in 3 different ethanol plants.
Okay. Do you take any issue with the fact that this project allegedly will save the ethanol industry?
I really think that the ethanol industry will survive. I think there's going to be other ways of getting rid of carbon that are more economical and less destructive than putting a tile line down people's farms.
And we had marked, Board Chair, we had marked the Van Diest tile map. I didn't know if that was formally offered as a hearing exhibit. Was it? We're good there? Okay. Mr. Van Diest, did you have any other paperwork? I noticed you have some paperwork with you that you believe is necessary for the board to understand your perspective on your property other than the tile map we have?
No, I don't think I have anything else significant. But these maps, I just received them yesterday and asked for them about a year and a half earlier. I got this letter dated September 22nd, addressed to me, and says, per your request, enclosed find these maps. A year and a half later,
And who's
they
that?
could find out I was going to testify, they gave me the maps.
Who's the letter from?
Letter signed by James Powell, Chief Operating Officer.
Of Summit Carbon Solutions?
Yes,
Okay.
on
And-
Cummins Solutions letterhead.
And so you haven't had time to fully digest these maps and the exact location of the routes, is that fair?
No, I just received them yesterday.
All right. And sir, are you the same Bob Van Diest associated with the Van Diest Supply Company?
Yes, I am.
And I understand you have operations all over the United States?
No,
Okay, throughout the Midwest?
in the Midwest.
Okay. And in your private business, have you ever utilized eminent domain for private profits?
Never, and I never will.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Van Diest, I have just a couple of questions for you, right here in front of you. You had mentioned during some of your previous testimony that you'd had an initial conversation after one of the public information meetings and then didn't hear back. Do you recall having an in-person meeting in the fall of 2022 with Mr. Jimmy Powell here at your office?
I'm not certain. Could be, I don't know.
Do you recall whether you received a letter in September of 2022 as a follow-up to that meeting that enclosed some plat maps of your properties?
We did get some maps earlier, but I couldn't interpret them. I think they got somebody's data mixed with my data. I couldn't put the pipeline together where it was going from the information I received.
But your testimony that it's possible you met in person in your office with Mr. Powell?
I don't recall.
You had
Mr. Van Diest, if you can just go ahead and move your microphone around so you can see Mr. Leonard. It's just hard to hear you. You can move the mic. There you go.
on your parcels in Webster County, are there some northern natural gas transmission lines?
I believe there are, yes.
Do you know if 4 is an accurate number of pipelines that are there on your properties in Webster County?
I don't know if that's the correct number or not, but no, it has some natural gas pipelines on some land in Webster County.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Board Member Burns? Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Diest? We appreciate you. Mr. Van Diest, we appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.